you don't have to get on a spaceship in order to find God. You just have to look deep within yourself. And I think the second thing that I would have told them is that in order to get to the next level, which he was promoting, you don't have to leave your vehicle, which is also what he was promoting. That it's possible to reach the next level in this vehicle, because this is the time to honor this incarnation, to honor who you are and why you are here. And one of the great things that my earliest teacher, Abraham Maslow, taught me was that there are really three things that separate out these highly functioning people that he called self-actualizers from the rest of us in ordinary human awareness. He said the first thing is that these people are independent of the good opinion of other people. And as I studied these great contributors that I've written this book of essays about, I found that every single one of them sort of marched to their own drummer, the music that they heard. Independence from the good opinion of others. The second thing he said is that these were people that were detached from outcome. That is, they didn't do what they did in their life in order to receive something for it. They weren't on outcome. They were in what we call process. They were just doing what they do because their heart told them, this is what your heroic mission is. This is what you're here for. And the third thing he said that separated these people out from ordinary human awareness is that these were people who had no investment in power or control over others. This wasn't what their life was about. That their life was much more about being on purpose and letting other people's opinions and how they dealt with things be something that others handled. And if you look at the people in the Heaven's Gate and the people who belong to cults and so on, they violated all three of those principles. Certainly they were not independent of the good opinion of others. That's what they lived for, was this charismatic leader's opinion. And certainly they were attached to outcome. They were headed towards a better one. And this leader, as he called himself, was someone who had great power and control over others. This is what his life was about. So that whenever I meet anybody who has an investment in power or control over me, or is more concerned with their outcome, or is more concerned with their good opinions, I know that I'm not with what I think of as an authentic person at this highest level. And these are qualities to really look at in your life. I remember when I had this explained to me when Maslow said, when I asked him, what do you mean by self-actualization? He said, these are people who are independent of the good opinion of others. I said, well, that's what I'm going to do from now on. I was 27 years old. I'm going to be independent of the good opinion of others. And he gave me this strange look. And I immediately worried about what that look meant. And whether it would affect my grade, you know. So getting to that place where you're independent of the good opinion of others. Back in the 70s, in the late 70s and the early 80s, I was a regular on The Tonight Show. I did that show 30-some times, and it was about every 3 or 4 weeks I would go up there and do the show. And then I would go home, and I had written this book called Your Erroneous Zones. And it was all about not worrying about other people's approval and all of these kinds of things. And I would go home, and I would go on the show, and when you go on a show like that, you have 7 or 8 minutes, and you have to say something quick and something light and something funny if you want to get invited back. I would go on and I would tell a little joke or say something amusing or whatever, and then I'd get home and I'd have 500 or 600 letters from people from all over the country angry at me about what I had said and how I had said it and so on. So I used to think to myself, why do I let these things bother me? Because they did, and I would find myself, all of the nice letters I would just set aside and say, that's nice, but the people that were saying something, I would want to defend myself to these people. And then I came across this wonderful letter that that H.L. Mencken, who was a humorist at the early part of this century, had copied, and he would write. He was like a modern-day Voltaire. You know, I mean, he just took on everybody. Or Art Buchwald would be another example of this kind of reporter in the 20s. But he satirized everything, and he had written out in one of his columns, to anybody who might send something critical to me, this is my response. And he had done it in advance. And I thought it was so good that I had 5,000 copies of it. Mimeographed. This was before Xerox. I had 5,000 copies of this thing mimeographed. And every time I would get back from doing the Tonight Show and I got a whole host of these letters, I would just seal 40 or 50 of those into an envelope and then just send them off all over the country. And I wanted to be a fly on the wall when they would open them up and read them, you see. Now, I'm far too spiritual today to do such a thing. But the fact that I like to tell this says I think a lot about me. And here's what the letter said. I am sitting here in the smallest room in my house. Now, you all know what room that is. With your letter of criticism before me. Soon it will be behind me. H.L. Mencken. I wouldn't do that today. But it's a great anecdote for talking about how to get yourself to this place in your life where you literally become independent of the good opinion of other people without having to make them appear foolish. And what I want to speak about here is something that I have called in some of my writing and tapes and so on, manifesting. This idea of Siddhi consciousness or Christ consciousness is a place in our lives where the definition of it that I like best is a definition that says that Siddhi consciousness is a consciousness in which there is an absence of a time delay between what it is you are thinking about and having it materialize on the physical plane. So in the New Testament, this is referred to as the gift of fish and loaves. Okay, so that when you want to feed somebody and you don't have any food around and you can't get to a grocery store, if you're living at this level of consciousness, you put your attention on food and you are somehow, your energy connects with that food and it appears, called materializing or manifesting or whatever. Now, I'm not saying that here in this program, when it's over, you'll be able to put your attention on having a new BMW in your driveway when you get home, and it'll be there. Although I'm not saying it won't happen. My wife knows how to do this. So does yours. I just follow her around saying, how do you do that?